And we're live. There we go. Delve further. Official Overwatch League podcast now that I've got somebody paper contracted. There we are with mkL from the Washington Justice. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good.
He messages me, roll out of bed, grab some coffee. We're here. We're here ready to talk about the Overwatch League.
That's how it is when you're a European, man.
Yeah, I know exactly. You know, you got to be up, you got to be ready to go. It's esports hours. You don't get to sleep in. And that's totally cool with me because I'm sure I'll find ways to nap and sleep any of the stuff off because I think we're both kind of like still fighting colds.
Oh yeah, I've been having a rough New Year's. Started right before New Year's Eve and then been going until now.
And then it debates you like halfway through. You're like, oh, you're feeling better. Like, yeah, you can go out and do things. And no, and then you
Yeah,
come back
I
and
had
you're just like ill.
so
Again.
for New Year's I had strep throat, so I went to the doctor, got penicillin,
Yeah.
and then that got better, and then I just like started with the coughing and then everything else. So it was. I've been going through the phases, to say the least.
Gotta start the new year right. At least when you get to, LA, you'll be all healthy. Your immune system's just,
I'm good for the season. I'm just getting it out of the way, right?
Exactly. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, I have strep. Like, yeah, I got that done in January, baby. Let's go. So, obviously, I don't know if I would say just were signed, but recently you joined the Washington Justice. Let's jump into that. How did that kind of come about? How were you approached by Kate? How was that whole thing? And let's just kind of dip our toes in the water in the Washington Justice. How did you get there?
Well, so as most people know, I've known Kate from LNL. She was our manager, and I was doing what I do now for LNL. So we knew that Steffi was taking Silence, and then they were going to Atlanta. So I had some tryouts for Atlanta, but they were looking for, because the thing is that Atlanta is that me and Silence pretty much did the same thing.
Right.
So it didn't make sense for Atlanta to pick us both up when we're practically doing the same thing, because you don't want to build a staff of like 7 people, right? So I was looking for a team. I was kind of at the point where like, oh, everyone's already picked up all their staff. I've kind of given up. And then I was doing Team Norway, so I went to the Burbank studios with Team Norway. And then Kate contacted me about an interview. So I kind of knew already that she was working with an expansion team, but I didn't know a lot about it.
Right.
So she just hit me up. We had an interview there in person. She already knew what I did professionally, but she wanted to know more about, because this is like a big step up from what LNL was, right? There's like all the other stuff. So yeah, we had the interview. This was, I don't remember exactly when, but 5 months ago now. So it's been a very long time.
Yeah. So you've kind of been working there.
So we kind of shook hands. She was like adamant, like, okay, I know what you're gonna do. I kind of want to bring you on. So I was brought on very early. So I was there for like the early tryouts. And I mean, that was that. We had a good interview. She already knew how I was professionally, so like we didn't have to talk about, like, I didn't have to bring anything
with LNL before, and you guys
Kate's
were
like the manager that's like very hands-on. So like she would be there for scrim. She would even be there for staff discussions when we were like talking before scrims, after scrims.
Interesting. Now, you kind of touched on it there that you and Silence kind of did the same thing. So kind of walk me and the audience through the day in the life of like an Overwatch League analyst. Does that always include data? What are you kind of particular to when it comes to analyzing Overwatch? Like what's some things that you kind of try to bring to your team?
So, yeah, as you said, most people when they think analyst, it's like data. I don't really do data because Wizard already has his like data slaves anyways.
Sure.
So he has his entire team working on every part of that. So my title per se right now is like macro specialist. Like if a Wizard will come to me, is like, oh, we want to work on our ultimates. Can you look into this and this? And then I'll go over VODs and I'll like use my like expertise on macro. And then the other part of my job is just being there for scrims and giving feedback. Like our staff is structured in a way that our main job, we all have like a main specialty,
Sure.
but we also all fill in on like bring up discussions and we talk about this and that like a normal staff would do. But we always have like one job that we're all accountable for. So what that's mostly for the staff is that like Obasil's the tank specialist, Shrugger's the DPS specialist, and then Avala is like the support specialist. So they work with the supports, tanks, like role by role, and then I work mostly with Wizard. Like he'll just hit me up on Discord. We'll have like a 20-minute talk. I want like you to work on this and this, and then it'll be like a daily project or like a weekly project.
Okay, that's interesting. When it comes to the Overwatch League, I think that, you know, the coaches and the coaching staff don't really get a lot of camera time per se, and it's really not in the job description to be out there, you know, making content and kind of like putting out your personality. So if I could, I kind of wanted to get some like, you know, personality from, you know, the larger coaching staff that Washington has. Is that okay?
Okay.
So, like, when you work with Shrugger, you know, I do understand that he's a former player. I believe he competed in TF2 quite a bit. You know, what's Shrugger like for the audience? What's he like?
Shrugger's just really nice. That's like how I would describe Shrugger. So, he's just very approachable. He's like just really nice to talk to. He's not like he'll bring up what he thinks. He's not like super like confrontal. Like he won't like argue with you like because he's not that like stubborn type of person. He's very like he'll hear you out and then bring up what he thinks. So he's like he mostly does his own thing. Like I don't talk that much to Shrugger like professionally, so he mostly just does the DPS stuff, and then like if we're doing scrims, like we'll have our like little coach chat, so we'll talk there.
So who outside of Wizard, who would you say is like your closest member on the coaching staff? Who do you kind of like interact with the most?
It's kind of, I mean, me and Avala has like we've worked together before on the Optic, but the thing is that we're split by the time zone. So like when I'm awake, she's not awake.
Right.
Like we're only together for scrims. Like outside of scrims, I'd probably say Obasil, because we share like we're good friends as well. Like we'll talk in Discord, we'll like play games together, stuff like that.
Awesome, that's really cool.
And then Obasil is also kind of like me in the sense that like we're very like we like to argue a lot. Like not in a bad sense, but like if I think this is better than that, and I will not give up until like either
you're convinced.
either I realize I'm wrong or I get my point across and they understand. Like I'm like to a sense stubborn, but
in a good way. It's conventional. It's important to have, you know, those discussions and having, you know, a buddy to debate with and have and structure ideas with and around is important. You know, I think everybody kind of needs somebody to argue with at times, you know, like a sparring buddy. But and that's really cool, and that kind of like solves Obasil for me. But Avala is somebody that has come out in the community and has really pushed her, not her brand, but like putting out some like little interesting tidbits of information from, I don't know if it was specifically your guys' scrims, but there's been a lot of like info about her. So kind of what is she like behind the scenes?
I mean, I'm just gonna sit here and say everyone's really nice, but like Avala as well is like she's really nice.
Okay.
She's like, she's kind of like Sugar in the sense that she's very nice. She'll say what she thinks, and then she'll listen very nicely. Like she's not like kind of like how I would describe myself, which is like annoyingly stubborn at sometimes. She's very like she'll listen to you, and then if she agrees, and then. I mean, she's kind of like, she's very much how she comes off in public. She's just very nice, very genuine person.
What about the head honcho himself? What about the Wizardhyeong? He seems kind of an enigma to me. You know, we got a little bit of a podcast from him on like Oversight, but I what is he like behind the scenes? Can we talk about that?
I think everyone thinks Wizard's like just a piece of shit because of his persona, right?
Sure.
But honestly, working with Wizard is like the most fun I've had working in Overwatch, because he's like, he's like very like, he'll set the guidelines and he's like, okay, go do your own thing, go have fun, and then like I'll bring it up to him and then we'll like talk about this and that, like have some arguments, and then he's like really smart. So like I learn a lot just talking to him. And then he's very nice. He's very understanding. Like he's like the opposite of his persona pretty much, because his persona is like this awful person who's like thinks he's better than everyone else, right? But then when it comes to Wizardhyeong as a head coach, he's just really nice. He's like he jokes a lot, and he's very understandable, and he's also very smart at the same time, which like makes a great combo.
So it's that branding and the public doesn't necessarily match what's going on behind the scenes, and
yeah, not to. Yeah, I don't want to pop Wizard's bubble because he's got a good thing going on, but
fair enough.
The public Wizardhyeong is not the same as professional Wizardhyeong.
I think that's a very eloquent way to put that. That works. That works. Now, we were talking before the show, and we were talking about the format. How do you think that's really going to impact, the traditional teams and the expansion teams? How is that going to be a big change of format, or is that not going to be a huge deal to some of these teams?
So for the split between the different, like the Atlantic and Pacific, I don't think that's a huge thing, because I feel like they're both kind of balanced where I don't remember which one is which, but ours is very like top heavy and bottom heavy. There's like a pretty major split down the middle, and then the other one is like very even, with maybe like one outlier on the top and one outlier on the bottom.
Sure.
So I think being split into those different groups wouldn't make a difference, but how the different stages is rolling out, where like you're kind of like some teams have like a harder earlier stage, while maybe last season you kind of played the same teams every stage, and like the stages didn't really have a difference. So like for say like I mostly only know ours, but like we have like a really rough one first stage, which a lot of people thinks is going to be like really bad for us. Well, I think it's the exact opposite, because like we kind of get thrown into it. We kind like I don't want to like brush it off like over like, oh, we're gonna lose everything anyways, but like it's like we get a lot of experience that's gonna like help us grow as a team, and then we can bring that out onto like stage 3, stage 4, and then that's kind of as an expansion team what you're looking to, like using the first few stages to grow, because like quite frankly, like almost all expansion teams are going to be pretty awful stage 1, because like everyone's flying into LA now with like less than a month of practice before their first games. Like some have been practicing in boot camps, but they've been playing like contenders teams. They haven't been playing all the L teams. And then for us, we've been playing in NA, like we've been playing with like terrible ping on our Koreans. Like it's not been perfect practice, so it's like 1 month of good practice before you're playing against a team that's been playing for a year.
Right.
So like the reality is your experience is just not going to match up. Like you can have star talent, but your experience is just not there.
So with Justice, you're kind of anticipating like a slow burn upwards, though. So like you start, you're not last. You're just trying to get by. You're learning. You're growing. That's the kind of the key phrase I keep hearing. And once you kind of hit your stride in like stage 2, that's when we'll kind of see peak Justice. Is that what I'm getting?
I think it's very unfair to say we're gonna do really well in stage 1, right?
Right.
Like
I mean, I think that's fair for a lot of expansion
we're playing
teams, like
NYXL, which is like the team that everyone expecting to do best.
Right.
Like from our scrims, if that was like a direct correlation to how we're going to do on stage, then we would have done really well in stage 1. But like everyone knows it's just scrims, and scrims will be scrims, and we're using scrims to practice. We're not using it to win or anything. So like right now we're focusing on fundamentals. And then probably same for stage 1. We're gonna focus on building as a team. Like it's a whole season. It's not just one stage. It's not a quick tournament. You have to look like at the bigger picture, right?
Sure, of course. Now, one thing I did want to kind of like pick your brains on about scrims, how one thing that gets thrown around a lot and can be used as an excuse for a lot of teams is like hiding strats. Like how often do you really think in teams that you worked with in the past, like how often do you really see teams really hide strats in practice? Are they testing those strategies, or are they just not using them and they're kind of working at fundamentals? Is that something you kind of as a coach or an analyst like tend to do a lot of, is like hide strategy?
In tier 2 it happens a lot, because you're like, oh, these people talk to these people, so we can't show our strats to them, because then they're just going to tell them anyways, right? So in tier 2 you have to be really smart about who you show your strats to. In OWL there's like everyone's way more fair. Like if you show your strats, they're not going to instantly leak the VODs, because first of all you're looking at fines if you get found out that you're leaking VODs, right? So But then also my only experience with owl wads have been playing constant goats for like a few months, so there isn't a lot of hiding strats. They're like, oh shit, they're gonna play Ana on this map. Like, oh my god,
they're crazy.
Yeah, shaking up the entire game.
Right. Now, you mentioned goats coming in. There's a lot of it. You know, when it comes to this PTR patch, and we have no idea if this PTR patch is going to hit Owl Stage 1 or when a preseason happens. Nobody knows. But what are your kind of thoughts on the PTR patch? Is this something that we can be looking forward to, or is this goats on goats on goats?
I think goats is still very strong. It's strong in a very different way than, say, like contenders right now.
Sure.
So the difference is that like they changed Brig to be more of a healer, so like your Ryan will get like spiked down a lot and healed back up, while the contenders patch he'll just die. Like he just gets shield bashed and dies. And then for like other stuff, I think there's gonna be some variation. I think like the people on Twitter like Goats is dead. I don't think Goats is dead. I think Goats is very different. And I think you're going to see a lot of variations, like say like dropping D.Va for like Symmetra, dropping D.Va for Reaper, stuff like that.
Symmetra.
Like right now on PTR, there's like a lot of experimentation, but then again, it's going to calm down when people realize like what is good.
Right.
And then
exactly.
That's kind of like how Overwatch always would be. Like the first few weeks of PTR, it's like the wild rodeo because everyone's trying the new stuff, especially when there's like new characters. It's like with Ashe, and then people realize that Ashe wasn't that good anyways, but. Like it's just a lot of experimentation, and people go on Twitter, and then the fans get really happy because they're like, "Oh, Goats is dead," and then 1 week later, they're like, "Oh, Goats is still good." So I think PTR, if this is what OWL is going to be on, it's gonna be played very, very different than what Contenders is, because just how Brig is different. But I think still Goats, where Goats is really strong, is going to be played. There's going to be some variations, and then there's going to be some. There's more room for people, like for teams to like counter Goats, like picking DPS characters.
Sure. So you'll actually get to see DPS on their role a little bit.
Some teams are playing purely DPS, like 2-2-2 or
that's cool.
Ball and triple DPS and stuff like that.
Do you think it will kind of settle out back to like a just normal meta that everybody just kind of like adapts to and kind of adopts, and you might see a little bit of variation, but for the most part, do you think it's going to kind of just settle down at some point?
I think it's going to settle down. Like it's just it's gonna like the meta's gonna get figured out. You're gonna know what beats the most and loses to the least, right? And then everyone's gonna play that because no one has time to practice everything. Like that's just not how this game works. So
of course, with the amount of variables with the cart and where fights happen, there's too much to practice and so much
like
to,
the main reason I think Overwatch always just boils down to picking like the 6 best characters that synergizes the best is that like the game is just there's so much fucking chaos. Like there's so many variables, like the cart, high ground, all like dying to just random stuff. Like you're just especially like in my role, one thing I realized is that you're just trying to make it as easy as possible for the players, so like the least amount of bullshit can happen.
That's something that I had overheard from like listening to some of like the coaches in like League of Legends talk, was that there's like a power scale that you kind of have to balance at some point, where it's like the most optimal composition that like ideally would be the best in every scenario versus how difficult it is to pull off. You're always going to get like the easier to execute versus the highest optimal, because you're working with players, you're working with people, there is error there, you're playing against other people, there is error there as well. Like nothing works in a vacuum like that. So it is kind of interesting. And it's, would you say that's fairly accurate, or do you think that
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Like the thing is, like you still usually tend to go for like whatever is just the absolute best. Like if you're playing like playing dive, like it's pretty high skill ceiling. Like you're not picking easier character, but like you're still just like you're picking like 6 characters, like so you can get the most amount of time on those 6 characters, and then with subtle variations here and there, just to make it like, well, maybe you could get like 1% more out of playing another character on this and this and this and this point, right? It might just make more sense to just play that one character just to get more practice on that character.
And when it comes to It's something that I kind of was exploring when like the ban talk was like super prominent, and I know that I kind of messaged you and we kind of thought through it a little bit because I wasn't super sold on it, but after talking to a couple other contenders coaches and really getting a consensus argument from a lot of these, you know, prominent pundits and you know, incredibly Overwatch smart people, I've noticed that there's this trend that, like, yes, goats probably won't ever die. Neither will dive, right? There's these, like, kind of core compositions that, like, won't go away. So I've kind of narrowed them down to, like, you have your dive compositions. You know, you can move the pieces around and dive, but, like, the idea of just jumping with very mobile heroes, that probably won't go away anytime soon. Same thing with, like, a death ball or, like, a poke or a spam. Like,
yeah, like, we've had death ball comps for like years now. Like, we had the quad tank like 2 years ago. Like, it's still pretty much the same. Like, it's just a death ball comp that just goes like very high tempo.
Would you say that there's like, I think there's been kind of a small outlier with this weird kind of skirmish based quad DPS composition that like the East are running, and that is kind of permeating over to the West a little bit on like Route 66A is one in particular that like everybody on attack and sometimes on defense will run.
What are they playing?
Quad like, DPS. They're running
what
Ash,
quad?
Widow,
Yeah.
Ash, Widow, Ball, or Orisa, Mercy, Pharah, all this weird kind of stuff. Like, do you think that we'll see this? We'll ever see kind of an outlier composition that we haven't really seen before that is kind of completely new?
With bans or just in general?
Just in general. Just in general.
So like the way that comp works is just, like, you just create so much chaos. Everyone just like every single character works on its own. So like even if you like kill 2 people, the comp can still kill 2 people itself, right? So that like it's kind of just how root works. Like root first point, like it's so open while still having a lot of flanks, and like the point itself is really weird. Root's like a really weird map. So it like it's always enabled. Like it had like the solo healer Sombra for like so long.
Yeah.
Because we had the good packs, and then you just had a bunch of flankers that could run around the map freely. So the map has always like enabled like the self-sustaining characters like flankers, and say like you just pop like a Pharah with like a Mercy on it or something, and then the Mercy has a lot of mobility. So I think Root will always be one of those maps that like will allow for like really weird stuff to happen. I think there are like most other maps are very like Root's like the map that's like there's so little macro on that map. You just kind of just plow, like you just kill the other team. Fair. And then you just run around the map. While like other maps like King's Row and Hollywood, there's like you can use the map in a way that allows you to like shut down like that the like no strategy like compositions where you just run around, right? So I think for the future, like it makes like Root will always be this because Root just is that map. There's other maps that are similar, but not like Root's like the main map that will enable just really stupid shit to happen.
Another map that I've kind of heard through the grapevine that, you know, is kind of polarizing for some coaches is Busan. Have you guys practiced that a lot? What's your thoughts on this? I think this is the newest map kind of added to the competitive pool. Do you guys like Busan? Is that a fun map to play?
I mean, for my job, Koth is rarely fun because Koth is just
again
kind of a lot of brawly chaos.
Yeah.
I think Busan is a pretty decent map. Like it has a lot of variations, like the drum map. I think Shrine. Like everyone used to play Goat, and then there was this Orisa comp that used to be really popular, and then now there's like still a lot of Goats because you just go right side and you get on point. But there's like every map has like variation. The least variable map is like mecha base, because even downtown enables Widow a lot, Pharah a lot, stuff like that. So the map is fun picking comps, and it's really fun playing. I think it's a really fun map.
Interesting.
Same with a lot of Koth maps. It's just there's not a lot of like macro depth to the map because it's a Koth map, and the game mode itself doesn't really enable a lot of in-depth analysis.
Would you say that there's something you could change about control that might give it that that kind of a little bit slower pace, a little bit more analytical? Do you think that it's the length of each submap? Is it just like King of the Hill is always going to be just like big fights, not a ton of like map control variances? Is there any kind of change you would make to it that makes it a little bit more interesting?
I think the problem itself is just how it's built up. Like you started like with the concept of control where like you have this short like time, like you just go to 100 seconds.
Right.
And then all the maps are built around that concept, which makes that if you change a concept and all the maps are broken,
Right.
because then you have like really small maps for a longer game mode, which makes no sense. Because chokes are pretty hard to break on KOF. Like they're meant to be hard to break, so you have to use ultimates to break them. But if you make the game modes like really long, then you just get pummeled and spawn over and over again. Like, so I think KOF, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with KOF. I think just like for my role, KOF is just really boring because there's not like a lot to talk about. But like I think it's super entertaining to watch because like it just shows like great mechanical skill and like synergy between the teams. But like
that's fair.
For like analysis type standpoint, it's just there's not a lot to it. It's just a lot of brawling and picking what is the least like which path do we die the least taking.
Fair enough. Now doubling back to the Justice, there's a few players on there, namely some of the Korean players. I've been a big fan of Otto when he first kind of broke out in Korea, but for those at home that aren't necessarily super familiar with some of the Korean players, who really should we be keeping our eyes on? Who kind of sell us on some of the players that NA might not necessarily be super familiar with.
Funnily enough, I think it's the one that everyone thinks is going to be the worst. So
really?
I think Sansam is like really, really, really good. He eats more grabs than like some of the really high profile names like that we're scrimming against on like even now on PTR where like it's really hard to eat like grabs or like other ultimates because you have the 2-second cooldown. He still is the one that's eating the most grabs. Like it's insane.
Right.
So I think Sansam's like it's going to be like, oh shit. He got last a lot, but now he's not gonna be like, because that's like he's like a main reason that everyone's like looking down on us, because like yeah, he doesn't have the most impressive track record, but like it's not like we just picked up our players blindly. Like everyone went to pretty extensive tryouts, and he was like there was a lot of really good D.Va players in our tryouts, and he was just the best. Like simply, like he was just so good.
That's interesting. It is kind of fun to hear behind the scenes stuff and get to know the players before the matches. Obviously, don't want anything too sensitive. Don't want any leaks here. We're just trying to inject some new information. No harm, no foul type stuff. Would you say that he was the biggest surprise coming out of the trials for the team, or was there anybody else that kind of really shocked you, even with some of the intangibles? Like if there's like a big caller for the team, did that kind of surprise you?
Like I was like in the beginning, I was like really surprised, like because I think. Same with me with everyone's like, yeah, Giannis did win a lot in AL, but he didn't play that much. So like when I got like, because Wizard has always been like, oh yeah, Giannis is a god. So like, and then we got to see him play, and I was like, holy shit, he is actually a god. Because like, like with D-COD or other players, like I've seen him on Ping playing Ryan or stuff like that. Like it's so hard to block shot. It's so hard to hit good shatters. Because when you're playing on Ping, you lose the sound cues because the game gets really weird when you're playing on ping, and still Giannis just like performs so well while having like 200 ping, which like just blows my mind. And then same with like say Sansam, like he eats grabs with 200 ping, which like shouldn't be like possible.
So you got some
I think
big brain
like in
the
the beginning, like absolutely like Giannis just like blew me out of the water. Like I've never seen like that level of primals. Like the closest I'd seen was Smurf on Optic, because like Smurf's like known for his like insane Winston play, but then Giannis like is like a player that has it all. Like his Reinhardt is insane, his Winston is so good as well. And then Sansom surprised me a lot because like he wasn't a player that had like a very solid track record, but he's performing really well, like very very well. I mean, of course I'm really happy about all the players because we're doing really good.
Right, of course. No, we're not picking favorites here.
Yeah, I just like Corey the least.
Oh, okay. Get that out. Just throw the quick jab at the young Corey. All right, I feel you. I understand.
Me and Corey get along really well. Like we actually play a lot of chess.
Really?
And for some reason, Corey kicks my ass at it, which is very embarrassing as an analyst. But Corey kind of tries hard. Like he looks at all the the analysis
So
of like
studying up.
Yeah, he looks at like Magnus Carlsen, and I'm just trying to ride the Norwegian wave, you know, like we kind of have it in the blood. But yeah, Corey tries very hard. But yeah, everyone's like, the team meshes really well.
That's
the only thing that we got to work on, like the language stuff, and then just building as a team.
That's something that I kind of want to explore with you. I had spoken to Elk a long time ago about like language barriers and how he kind of did the same thing as you. You went to Talon, he went to Mega Impact. Like you still have that similar kind of experience. Do you think, or how much of a hindrance do you think language barriers are for teams? Because it kind of went into a lot of, or at least one particular team for me, specifically Guangzhou. Like when I was doing my power rankings, like that was one of the big things that I had marked them down for, is that like the communication for that team on paper looks like it could be kind of messy. Do you think that language barriers are this big hindrance, or do you think they can be overcome pretty quickly?
I think it's really bad. I think one thing that people really miss with the language barrier stuff is that it's really frustrating. Like knowing what you should do, but you're just unable to say what. Like Gido's like a guy that communicates a lot, right? But sometimes he just doesn't know what to say. Like he just doesn't know the English word for that word, and then he's just like stuck, like banging his head against the wall because like he knows the perfect play, he knows how to win this fight, but he just can't say it, and it has to be like insanely frustrating.
And then that kind of boils over sometimes, you know. Everybody's prone to tilt, and I think that term has been kind of redefined.
Everyone thinks like tilting is like really bad. Like I mean, you just get frustrated. Like everyone gets frustrated.
Emotion. That's all.
It's not fun to be unable to communicate.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a process. Like I think language barriers, like it's overcomable. Like everyone's super motivated, so everyone's working really hard.
Sure.
But it's just that like it's gonna take time. It's not like you're gonna learn a new language overnight, right?
Exactly. There's no Rosetta Stone out there that's just gonna like give you, you know, English proficiency overnight. Like there's not a pill to take. It's a brick by brick process to build the Parthenon. You know, it's not something easy. But that's interesting. Specifically talking about Gido, because he did kind of make this transition over to flex support. What's your kind of thoughts there? Might we see him on Tracer ever again? I think people look very fondly back on his days in Apex. And
well, as we said, Root is a weird map, and then Gido is a pretty good Tracer.
Very interesting. That's cool. And it's seeing the homage there would be really fun. What's your kind of goal for season 2? Is there anything that you've got on the horizon? Anything that you personally want to kind of achieve?
Well, personally, I'm looking to like build more of a personal brand. It's something I kind of put off before. Like I never wanted to like build the mkL brand. I was always just trying to compete and win. But now that it's like more of the big leagues, like kind of got to think forward. And then I've been getting into streaming. I think it's really funny interacting with fans. And then we also have like our fan discords. I have my personal Discord, and just interacting with people. It's really fun to me. So like building my brand is like one of the bigger things, and then also just work on my craft. Like I don't like, if I lose, it doesn't really matter to me as long as I grew as a person, grew as like an analyst, or as a coach. Like I'm always just trying to like better myself, like get something out of it.
So outside of like specifically VOD reviewing and just studying Overwatch, how do you go about kind of building your analysis up when it comes to like macro rotational strategy? Is there books you read? Is there other esports you watch? Like what's your kind of, I'm not asking for the secret sauce, but like how do you practice that?
So for like certain like stuff like tempo and stuff, you can actually just like, if you look into other games, like I learned a lot from just watching other games, like how like the absolute biggest way that I grow as a coach or an analyst is that I just talk to other coaches. Like you can learn so much by just picking other people's brains. Like they'll just think in a way you didn't think. Like that's just how it works, right? It's like if I talk to Wizard, or I go talk to Sword, who's like an XLNL coach, or talk to Jane, talk
Sure.
to this person, that person. Like I learned so much. So like back in the day when I was on LG, after LG like died,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna really work on myself. I want to really work on becoming a better at my job. So I just went around and I talked to players, I talked to coaches, I just learned, like I just picked their brains. I just brought up like I would just randomly talk to people and it was like, oh, what do you think about this and this, and then why? Like why do you think that?
Mm.
And then I learned so much because like a big thing about learning is just being critical, right?
Yeah, of
It's gotta
course.
be critical, and then just sometimes you hit like you just don't get it anymore, so you need like other perspectives. So like there's no easy way. Like you just kind of gotta. I just kind of do it all. Like I'll watch VODs, I'll watch tournaments, I'll watch
Mm-hmm.
other games, I'll talk to other coaches.
What would you say was like the biggest? What would you say like is the biggest concept that you've brought over for another game? Like, could you use an example from
Tempo,
Tempo
absolutely tempo.
from what game?
Hearthstone.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's also in League. They kind of describe it in a different way in League, where they
Mm-hmm.
talk about like having like lane priority,
Sure.
which is just tempo anyways. Like tempo is like it's an abstract term. It doesn't mean anything. It's just but it like you kind of just describe it as like winning. Like if you kind of if you're winning, you have the tempo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and I think that Blizzard does a lot in their games is that like so in Hearthstone you kind of do like you do value and tempo, right? Which are
Sure.
like the two like different strategies in a sense. Like tempo is about going fast. You have the upper hand over your enemy, and then value is just you try to win with combos. You try to win with like big minions, and then having like early game board clears, so you can just
Right.
constantly clear the board, and then you just put down your huge legendary minion late game and win with that, right? While I'm more tempo oriented deck, it's like every single turn I'll put down a minion, and then how are you going to clear all this shit? Like I'm just putting down minions, minions, and then that's kind of also like then you can like so you understand why is this strategy winning, right? Oh, because you're overwhelming the opponent, and then you like adapt that into Overwatch. Like, oh yeah, if we just run at the Ryan over and over and over again, like if he doesn't properly react and just dies, they lose. That's like kind of how goats works, right? Like
Yes.
you have the tempo and you're just going fast. Like it's really hard to react.
When it came to, your own personal development and growth, like when you were younger, when did you kind of have this eureka moment where it was just like, oh, I have to like critically think about things if I want to learn? It was, and the reason why I asked this question, Mendo actually had put out a tweet recently, kind of explaining to somebody in this chat like how to get better at something. It's not really getting better at something. It's just learning how to learn better, right? So when did you kind of like have that moment for yourself, like in your own, like when you were younger and as a teen, in school, or was that something that was always instilled from you, that you always had like instilled from you from your parents? As was there a
So
moment for you?
in a sense, I've always been very critical in the
Okay.
way of thinking. Like, oh, it's been, but then my big moment when it comes to like Overwatch is that I got kicked from a team. So I was like, I just wasn't good enough.
Mm.
I got complacent. I didn't improve. So like, holy shit! Like I was like, in the beginning, you're like sad, like, oh, what did I do to deserve this? And then you're like, fuck, like, and then I just like sat down. And I realized like it's my problem. I need to get better. So I just worked harder. Like I just felt like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't studying hard enough. I didn't offer enough to the team that like I was worth my salary and worth my weight like in the
Mm.
team.
And you mentioned this before, working with so many coaches, and being able to pick a lot of their brains. Is this something that you're kind of comfortable doing, like working with so many people? Is this something that you're actually excited to do because you have so many different perspectives to kind of learn from and really try to improve your style of analysis?
I love being right. I love arguing and being right. So it's not I'm not uncomfortable with that at all. Like if I believe in something, I will argue. Like I can sit there for hours and hours and hours. Just like that's why I love working with Silence because like me and Silence would just argue about everything all the time. Like Silence is so much fun to argue with because he's just as me, like super stubborn. Like he really believes in what he believes in,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's at least how I like that's how I learned to learn. Just arguing, like being critical, and then just like picking other people's brains, like formulating your thoughts in a way that like enables them to like relay their thoughts back, right? Instead of just saying I think this, like you're talking in a way that like you want them to reply like, why do you think this, and then what do you think about this, right?
Is it something
Like
you think that players should be doing more of, is like talking to other players, not necessarily leaking anything, but like just kind of picking the brains of other people? Or do you think that there's just some people who are just like super cool with just being by themselves and just grinding on their own, and they kind of have almost a one-track mind in a sense?
I think like you can always learn more. Like you're never gonna like cap out your knowledge on Overwatch, right? And so like I don't think you'll get as much out of it as like you can play a rank. Like you can learn on your own. Like you won't get better at shooting stuff by talking to another player, right?
Sure, of course.
But you might learn this and this quirk about this character, or like this and this tech on this character that you didn't know before, which is like might help increase your play by like 5%, 10%, right? I think as like a coach, it's like you kind of just have to do it. Like you have to find some ways to learn, right? Whether it's studying on your own or like picking other people's brain. As a player's like, it's not that like it's still valuable, but it's not like I wouldn't recommend everyone doing this. Like I would recommend you try it and see how it helps you. But if it doesn't net the same results, you might as well just go and play some deathmatch, like Widow deathmatch, and shoot heads,
just
right?
kick some heads. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to kind of this player burnout discussion that predated like the big ban, debate that was happening, we had Mark Cuban in, and he was going back and forth, Nate. Is this something? Well, I would imagine that a lot of teams are trying to combat this as best they can, but could you talk a little bit about what Washington Justice is doing to really, put a foot forward when it comes to player burnout? Is that something you guys are really like trying to, hinge or hedge as much as possible, trying not to have your players super fatigued for this season?
I'm pretty sure every single L team knows what like is the good like good region of practice, right? Like, we like right now we're not going super hard because we're not in LA, so we're like playing like 2 blocks a day and then having like maybe 2 hours of review. That makes like 6 hours. But then like I'm pretty sure what like the standard would be is like just 2 or 3 blocks with like 2 or 3 hours of review or just discussion. Because like you also gotta like when people structure in a way that you're like as a team for 12 hours, like you're also just like how are the coaches supposed to do any sort of prep work? Like I'm just like how are they having decent reviews when all their time is spent scrimming? So like for the burnout, like even like with LNL Optic, like I haven't experienced going above 3 blocks a day. Like that seems to be like
the limit.
I'm very much like, and like I think that I would rather have 2 or 3 really good blocks than 5 okay blocks. Like I want and I expect 100% when we're scrimming, because if not, you're wasting my time. Like I can't review a scrim block where we went 80%, because then we're just losing to mistakes, right? Like individual mistakes. Like if I'm gonna like go seriously into a scrim block, it needs to be 100%, because I need us to lose to our like. I need us to lose and win by our macro decisions and how we play as a team, not because this player fucked up. Because there's nothing to learn there, right? So there's like a lot of stuff. Like if a block is bad, then there's 0 value out of it, because there's more than just the 2 hours of you scrimming there. It's the review the coach is doing, and then the players rewatching their POV, right? Then all that value is just lost.
Makes sense. Now. So, Go ahead.
I was like, I don't think players are getting like, people are bringing it up, but I haven't really heard about much burn. Like, there's the people retiring, but I think there's more reasoning than just burnout for that.
Okay.
Like, there are other stuff going on that causes them to want to retire and stuff like that. But like most teams are just playing the same amount, where they're playing 2 to 3 blocks with some review. And then people get either alone time or they can play ranked or stuff like that.
Would you? I think that's probably where a lot of this, these large practice numbers come from, is like the insertion of like counting playing, solo queue or ranked as practice. Would you consider that, a mandatory part of, a professional player's life? Do you think that is also practice?
I no. So like,
Okay,
I don't remember the exact metaphor he used, but like
sure,
when a basket player goes home and he shoots hoops on his garage, that's not practice, right? He's just doing it because he loves his job. He's having fun.
sure.
Like, of course, you're honing your skill, but so is just doing like repeat throws, like when you're a basketball players. But you're not mentally torturing yourself just going outside and throwing a ball, right?
Mm.
Like, it's not like the main cause for burnout is just being so stressed and so overwhelmed with your work. But like, rank doesn't have that same amount of stress that like having a scrim block would have, because you don't need to go 100% into your ranked game the same way you should do when you're doing a scrim block, right?
100%. That makes a lot of sense. So it is kind of more of a mental thing. Okay, that's cool.
And then it doesn't help that the game is in a state where like DPS players aren't playing DPS characters, but like
Sure.
that's kind of that has nothing to do with our like scrim schedule, right? Like we can't really
Of course.
That's up Blizzard.
A choice and just a meta game. It happens. I'm sure we'll get another one sooner or later. Now, when we go into the Overwatch League, if you can speak on this, because again, I don't want to cause any anger anywhere. But is there anybody you're looking to really kind of not create a rivalry with, but is there a team out there that you personally would be like, feel really good if you just beat?
I really want to kick Sephi's ass. Like, I just really want to kick Sephi's ass. Like, I love Sephi, I love Silence, but I just really want to kick their ass.
Atlanta, DC, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. It's pretty close regionally.
There's this like superficial like rivalry because it's LNL versus LNL, which like it's just like the dumbest rivalry. I just want to beat Sephi because it's Sephi, right?
Sure.
Like, and then like, I mean, I want to beat everyone. Like, I want to win. But, like, of course, beating Atlanta would be the most fun, because then they're like, haha, I made the right choice and I went to Washington, right?
That would be, I would imagine that would be, wonderful to have on that record, and just kind of throw a quick jab at some former coworkers. Is there anything else about season 2 that's kind of piquing your interest? Are you excited about anything in particular? Any just general stuff?
I'm just excited about everything. Like, it feels like everything in my career is kind of like culminating into this, right? Like, I've been slogging my way through contenders for quite a while, even open division like a while back. So it feels really good to like have your work pay off. And now I just want to keep going, riding this wave, and then keep honing my craft, and hopefully like just show the people that they're wrong and that we're not 20th, at least we're 19th. Hopefully.
Do you want to kind of explore that a little bit and explain, why you don't think that people are kind of evaluating you guys correctly?
Well, my first initial thought is that people are like, oh, there's drama, so they must be bad, which is kind of like, I brought this up before we started recording. Like,
sure,
people did this with Philly as well. Like, I remember ESPN, like in their like before season 1, where they're like, oh yeah, Philly Fusion is gonna get last because they didn't show up for preseason, which is like they're kind of using a pretty stupid reason. Like, they're like, oh, and I kind of feel the same way for us. Like, people are writing us off because we had this stupid drama going on before the signings and stuff like that. And then there's legitimate reasons. Like, people are like, oh, this player only loses. There's a lot of unproven talent. Like is Wizard really that good as a coach? Like, yeah, that's like legitimate reasons. But there's like I don't know what to say. Like, 20th is rough, man. I don't like. There has to be some serious issues to get like dead last.
Who would you, or roughly where would you think your team kind of sits right now going into stage 1? Like you mentioned, there needs to be tempered expectations because it is going to be a little bit difficult. It's going to be a growth stage. But where for the Washington fans do you think you guys will kind of sit in terms of power? Not necessarily, end of stage 1, placing, but, whereabouts on the table do you think you guys will finish?
Like the season?
No, just stage 1. Just first stage, coming into the first stage.
Probably fairly low, but not like
Not
like
not
say like
last.
yeah, because we're not playing all the teams anyways. Like
Sure.
I expect us to at least take 1 or 2 games. That like
Okay.
there's a few like opponents that like they're gonna be rough. They're just gonna be rough. Like that's the reality. But
Mm.
for every other opponent we have, like I feel very confident in winning at least some of those matches. So like saying like top 5, I think is very unrealistic. But like saying like 10th to 12th, I think is fairly realistic for how it's going right now.
It's not bad. I mean, that's, lower 50%. That's not bad at all. That's
And then
something
we
I
win
think
the
people
rest,
can.
and then we get top 1, right?
There you go. You just win it late when it matters.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the goal here. Now, as an analyst, kind of just wrapping this up, we know that patches are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of concerned about that at all? Like having to keep up with all these, moving parts? Is that something you're anticipating? Or is it something that's, again, kind of exciting that, there's always going to be some sort of novelty factor?
For me personally, I think patches are really fun.
Okay.
Like I really like the theorizing, and then as a team, our entire core was built up by being meta proof. Like our entire tryouts, we didn't like we would like ban certain characters to force them into playing this and that. We would tell them play, like say play Faradive, play this, play like no Winston, etc. etc. It's like for our entire tryouts, like it was built on being meta proof. So I'm not concerned of us like having gaps in our roster, because I'm pretty sure we can play pretty much everything at this point.
And when it comes to just being in LA, do you think that, I've heard that posed to a couple teams as being potential dangers. Do you think that the LA life is going to hinder you guys at all?
I'm pretty so I mean the Burbank area, it's very very calm. Like, and then they're gamers. They're gonna be in the house playing games mostly. I don't think they're gonna go out and get robbed.
Nobody's out partying.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be different. It's just gonna be less ping, pretty much.
Which is a kind of a net positive, right?
Yeah, of course, it's a huge positive because we have Koreans playing on NA servers, and then like our entire team has been on ping for like as long as we've been streaming now, because we have like all our NA players are East Coast, which means they have 100 ping, and then all our Korean players are in Korea, which means they have 180 ping.
So kind of last little bit again. I like to leave this open for the guests. Say whatever you'd like. The last 5-6 minutes are yours, and then we'll kind of wrap up. I'll double plug the social medias, and yeah, whatever you want to plug, whatever you want to say. The last little bit's yours.
Well, I just want to say, like, I get why people. I feel like it's kind of cool to put us last. Like Ajax put out a tweet the other day where it was like it's just kind of become the norm to put us last because of the drama bullshit. And I feel like if you look into the actual players, like there's like we had like a pretty good spot on Reddit when there was like this Mikael podcast actually, when he brought on a lot of the pro players who were like, oh yeah, they have like insane players, like why are they going to get last, stuff like that. And then that was when we started scrimming, and they're like, yeah, they're doing really well in scrim. So I don't give a shit if anyone puts us last. Like, I think it's like, yeah, you're just proving that you're an awful analyst. It's whatever. Like, if you have your reasons for it, then go ahead. Then it's just predictions. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Of course.
But if your reasons for putting us last is that it was drama, then you think you're stupid. It's whatever. I just think, like, if you genuinely look into our roster, there's a lot to be excited about. Like our scrims. Like, so to clear this thing up, Wizard went on this interview with, I think it was Axon Esports, and then he said we're losing every single scrim or something. That was a joke. That's Wizard. Like, that was actual Wizard in that interview. He was just memeing.
Sorry,
like,
we're not losing mind games.
Yeah, we're not losing every single scrim. Like, relax. We're not that bad. That's just Wizard. Like, that's Wizard's humor. Like, Wizard is like a very memey person. And that was really weird because that was like actual Wizard coming out in an interview.
Which, you know, again, doesn't tend to happen all that often. You know, you guys are super busy. The Overwatch League is very demanding. So getting a hold of a coach and being able to pick their brains, you know, it probably will happen in the preseason and most likely in you know, the breaks during the off season. Do you think that was only a joke, though? Do you think that he was trying to, like, puppeteer some stuff behind the scenes, like, lower at the community expectations? You guys come in, like, as an underdog, and you look better overall when you end up winning everything?
I mean, yeah, of course, like, he's feeding into, like, the meme, right?
Sure.
Where, like, oh, Washington is gonna be the new Shanghai Dragons and stuff like that. And then there's also, like, we're not winning every scrim. That's impossible. We're scrimming only like really good all teams. Like, we're not even scrimming bottom teams. We're scrimming like the upper 25% teams right now. Like, it's like our scrims are fucking rough, but we're still doing fairly well. So,
well, that's good. That's good. You know, meeting you at BlizzCon and just kind of interacting with you, I'm super happy that, you know, you're in Overwatch League and you're out there killing it. You know, I know you said you were streaming, but is there anything else you've kind of got planned content wise? Is there anything you got kind of coming up that you want to plug?
Well, now that I'm not dying from illness, I'll try to get back into streaming. You can find me on Twitter. Do you do graphics or do I plug it?
Yeah, it should be below you, but for the podcast listeners, definitely let them know.
So I'm Justice_mkL on both Twitter and Twitch. That's like the two places you can find me. I have a Discord. You can find that on my Twitter. That's like best ways to interact with me. Yeah, I'm just trying to get back into streaming now that I'm not dying from strep throat. And aside of that, I'll try to like interact more through podcasts and stuff like this.
All right. So I can get you on for episode 2, like midway through. Awesome. Beautiful. All right, cool. This has been another episode of Delve Further. Please, if you're into Overwatch, follow everybody down below. I'll have the links in the descriptions. If you're watching on video, you'll see the links. Go out there and make a Twitter. Follow us up. Come on now. Support your local scenes. And yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.